Hey everybody, Michael Fabiano here from Sports Illustrated Fantasy with your Fabs Five trends you need to know from what was a pretty terrible Week 15. At number 5, let's talk about the Broncos wide receivers. Remember how excited we were to draft Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, young guys with a lot of upside? Well, that's not been the case. In the last 4 weeks, no Broncos wide receiver has scored more than 13.2 fantasy points in a game. In fact, only 2 wide receivers during that time have hit double digits. The Broncos have become very run heavy, which means even with Drew Lock under center, that maybe take some chances downfield, I can't trust any Broncos wide receivers during the fantasy postseason. And number 4, it's the Dolphins backfield that kind of took a confusing turn for the worst, right, this past week, as the team turned over their backfield to Duke Johnson. Right, that's right, Duke Johnson. Even with Myles Gaskin active from the COVID-19 list, Johnson played 57% of the offensive snaps, and he saw a 40% touch share en route to nearly 26 fantasy points. The Dolphins have signed him to the active roster, and it looks like they're going committee in Miami. So I'm not saying that you can trust Duke Johnson after that big performance, especially against a tough Saints run defense, because it looks like the Dolphins are going with DJ and Gaskin and potentially Salvon Ahmed as well. So Duke Johnson, if you started him last week, you're a genius. Most people probably didn't. At number 3, let's talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, he has scored the second most fantasy points among wide receivers in the last 3 weeks. He's been phenomenal. During that time, 35 targets. That's been great. And he has a great matchup this week against the Atlanta Falcons. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is suddenly a potential wide receiver 2 or flex. But here's the problem. Jared Goff has been placed on the reserve COVID-19 list. And if he can't start this week against Atlanta, that means Tim Boyle will be the starting quarterback for the Lions. So even though St. Brown has been on fire, if Boyle's the starter, you'd probably have to at least consider not playing him and maybe using him no more as a flex starter. At number 2, let's talk about Najee Harris. I mean, has he hit the rookie wall here? In his first 9 games, he averaged an impressive 19.6 fantasy points. He played 85.5% of the snaps. In the last 5 games, he's seen his points per game average dip to 13.8, and he's still seeing the same number of snaps played on offense. Now, a big part of this has to do with the Steelers. I mean, they rank dead last in run percentage and rushing yards per game over the last 5 games. Now, I know it's tough to bench a guy like Najee Harris, and you probably got to play him against the Chiefs, but it's pretty clear that Pittsburgh's running game is broken at this point. And at number 1, let's talk about Tom Brady. He's coming off of one of the worst fantasy performances, not only of this season, but maybe his entire career. 4.8 fantasy points against the New Orleans Saints. He completed a season-low 54.2% of his passes. He threw for 214 yards. That's the least in 2021. And he lost Chris Godwin and potentially Mike Evans to injuries. And also keep in mind, Leonard Fournette also going to miss the rest of the regular season. So Tom Brady is down potentially 3 of his top players on the offensive side of the football going into a game against the Carolina Panthers. Now, Antonio Brown could be back this week, which means he suddenly would have value as a wide receiver 2 or flex, and that will help Brady's value, of course. But, I mean, when you look at the numbers and you look at this defense, Carolina has been pretty tough on quarterbacks at times this season, and Brady potentially without Mike Evans in addition to Chris Godwin. Well, folks, I'm not sure if the GOAT is a must-start this week in fantasy football leagues. And those were my Fabs 5 trends you need to know from Week 15. Hey, folks, we are here at Sports Illustrated trying to help you win a fantasy football championship. So make sure you check back every single day for updates. Waiver wire, start 'em and sit 'em. We've got it all at si.com/fantasy.